He thought it was just a lost kid wandering the forgotten streets. But what this 6-year-old boy carried in his arms would change lives forever. Jamal's discovery in an abandoned building leads to a reunion that no one saw coming, and the gift from the baby's father the next day becomes a headline-making moment that inspires the world. The sun was beginning to set, casting an orange glow across the forgotten part of town, nestled between towering, crumbling structures and a maze of narrow alleyways. The abandoned building sat in isolation, long forsaken by its original tenants. The walls were chipped, revealing layers of paint that had once been vibrant but were now faded and peeling. The floor was covered with years of dust, broken glass, and discarded debris. This part of the town was rarely visited, save for the occasional stray cat or the wind that whispered through the broken windows. Among the discarded remnants of what used to be a lively neighborhood, a small boy, no more than 6 years old, wandered, laughing, as he ran through the dimly lit hallways. He had been playing hide-and-seek with his friends, and this old building, long since abandoned by the rest of the world, was the perfect place to hide. His tiny feet scurried through the dusty space as he hid behind old crates, trying to stifle his giggles. But as he wandered deeper into the building, he felt a strange tug in his chest, a curiosity pulling him toward an area he hadn't yet explored. The boy's friends, no longer visible in the distance, had long given up on finding him. The laughter from the outside seemed so far away, as if the world beyond the walls had forgotten this place entirely. The building was quiet now, with only the faint rustling of wind and the distant hum of traffic to remind him of the life that still existed outside. But something else caught his attention, a soft, pitiful cry that seemed to come from deep within the building, echoing off the hollow walls. The boy's heart raced. The sound was unlike anything he had ever heard before. It wasn't the usual scurry of rats or the call of stray animals that roamed these empty spaces. No, this was something much more fragile, something in need of help. He tiptoed cautiously toward the noise, his small hand brushing against the cold brick walls as he navigated through the dim corridors. Each step he took seemed to make the cry louder, pulling him closer to the source. The boy's mind raced as he wondered what could be making such a sound in this forgotten place. It felt like an eternity before he reached the corner where the sound was coming from, his tiny heart beating faster with each passing second. As he rounded the corner, his eyes widened in shock. There, lying on the cold floor, wrapped in a frayed pink blanket, was a tiny baby. The baby's face was red and streaked with tears, its small limbs weakly flailing in distress. The boy froze for a moment, unsure of what to do. He had never seen anything like this before, a baby, alone and abandoned in a place so desolate. It didn't seem real. His mind raced as he wondered how the baby had ended up in this forsaken place, why no one had come to help, and how he could fix this situation. For a brief moment, the boy stood still, simply staring at the baby, unsure of his next move. He could feel the weight of the situation settling in his chest. He couldn't just walk away. Despite his young age, he knew instinctively that the baby needed help, and fast. His tiny hands gently reached for the baby, and he carefully picked the infant up, holding it close to his chest. The baby's cries softened as the boy whispered comforting words, even though he wasn't sure if the baby could understand him. He looked around for any sign of others, anyone who could help, but the building remained eerily silent. With the baby in his arms, the boy's next step was clear. He had to get out of there. Despite the overwhelming uncertainty and fear, He made his way back toward the entrance of the building. His heart raced as he moved quickly, the baby's tiny weight pressing against his chest. The cries had stopped, but the boy knew that he couldn't rest until he found the baby the help it desperately needed. The boy, still shaking from the shock of finding the abandoned baby, knew that he couldn't wait around for someone else to come along. He had to act quickly. Despite his small frame and the weight of the responsibility that pressed down on him, there was no hesitation in his heart. The baby needed help, and he was the only one there to offer it. With a soft but steady grip, the boy cradled the baby carefully in his arms. He made sure the tiny body was supported, doing his best to keep the baby warm with the tattered pink blanket still wrapped around its fragile form. The baby's face was streaked with tears, its eyes closed, but its tiny chest rose and fell with each shaky breath. The boy's heart ached for the infant, but he pushed the emotion aside. There was no time to dwell on fear. The baby needed to get out of the building and into the hands of someone who could help. As he walked swiftly through the dark and abandoned corridors, the boy's determination grew. The building's silence seemed louder than ever, and each step felt like it carried the weight of the world. He knew he couldn't carry the baby too far, but he also knew that he couldn't simply leave the infant in a place like that, where no one would be able to help. His eyes scanned the street as he exited the building, looking for someone who could assist him. Thankfully, not far from the entrance, a small shop stood on the corner. The shopkeeper, an older woman with a kind face, was sorting through boxes outside, preparing for closing time. The boy, breathless and desperate, rushed up to her, his eyes wide with urgency. "Please, help! A baby! I found a baby. It's alone," the boy said, his voice trembling as he held out the infant. The shopkeeper's face changed immediately, her brows furrowing in confusion. At first, she thought the boy was just a lost kid, wandering too far from home, perhaps playing a prank. But when she saw the tiny bundle in his arms, her heart sank, and concern replaced her skepticism. "Come inside, quick," she urged, motioning for him to follow. The boy hurried into the small shop, the shopkeeper following him and locking the door behind them. Inside, she helped him carefully place the baby on the counter, covering the infant with a soft towel she kept nearby for cleaning purposes. She moved quickly, calling the authorities. The phone call to the police was swift but urgent. "I've got an abandoned baby here," the shopkeeper said. "A boy brought it in. Please send someone now." The boy, standing anxiously by the counter, watched as the shopkeeper worked with purpose. He stayed close to the baby, his small hands trembling as he lightly stroked the infant's tiny arm. He didn't want to leave its side, not even for a second. He didn't know what would happen to the baby, but he knew he had to be there until help arrived. The sound of sirens soon filled the air, growing louder with each passing moment. The boy's heart raced, and he felt a strange mix of relief and uncertainty. He had done his part, but there was no guarantee that the baby would be okay. Moments later, 2 police officers burst into the shop, their eyes immediately scanning the room before settling on the boy and the baby. The officers quickly took over, making sure the baby was in safe hands, checking for any immediate signs of distress, and preparing to transport the infant to the hospital. The boy watched silently, his fingers fidgeting with the hem of his shirt. Though exhausted from the ordeal, he felt a sense of pride wash over him, knowing that he had done everything he could to make sure the baby wasn't left alone in the cold, dark building. As the officers took the baby away, they gave the boy a soft smile, thanking him for his bravery. The shopkeeper, too, offered him an approving glance, now realizing the boy was no lost child, but a hero in his own right. But the boy said nothing, his mind still focused on the baby, praying that the infant would be okay. In his young heart, he knew this was only the beginning. The baby's life had been saved, thanks to his quick thinking and determination, and for now, that was all that mattered. As the news spread, whispers of the boy's heroic act began circulating throughout the town. The police and media soon revealed something that stunned everyone. The baby the boy had saved was none other than the missing son of a wealthy and influential millionaire couple. The child had been abducted from their home weeks ago, and despite the desperate search, no leads had surfaced. It seemed like the case was growing cold with each passing day, only adding to the grief and anxiety that had plagued the millionaire family. The couple, Jonathan and Elizabeth Whitmore, had been beside themselves with worry. Their world turned upside down since the abduction of their infant son. They had hired private investigators, contacted the authorities at every level, and even made public pleas for any information regarding the whereabouts of their child. Despite their vast resources, the Whitmores were still just like any other parents in their heartbreak, feeling helpless and alone in their quest to find their son. For weeks, they had searched, exhausted all options, and held on to fading hope that somehow their baby would be found. The missing child was not only their joy, but the light of their lives. Now, the miracle they had been praying for had come in the most unexpected of ways. When the police finally made the connection, the Whitmores were both shocked and relieved. Their son had been found, but it wasn't in the way they had imagined. The boy who had found their son wasn't a detective or even an adult. He was just a young boy, only 6 years old, named Jamal. His actions had saved their world, and the Whitmores knew they had to meet him, thank him, and somehow repay him for the incredible kindness he had shown to their family. At the hospital, the scene was nothing short of emotional. The baby was safe, doctors confirmed, and it seemed that with the right care, he would recover from his ordeal with no lasting harm. Elizabeth stood by her husband, holding tightly to his arm as the officers led them to where the young hero had been brought. Jamal was sitting with his family in the waiting area, trying his best to stay calm, though the nerves were clearly visible on his face. The shock of his actions had not yet worn off, and the magnitude of what had happened still felt surreal. As he sat in the sterile, quiet hospital room, he thought about the baby, the danger he had faced, and the strange twist of fate that had led him to this point. The Whitmores approached with hesitant steps, their hearts swelling with gratitude and admiration. Jonathan, always a composed figure, looked visibly shaken as he knelt in front of the young boy. Elizabeth, her eyes filled with tears, gently placed a hand on her husband's shoulder as they both tried to find the right words to say. "You," Jonathan said, his voice thick with emotion. "You saved our son. You brought him back to us." His voice cracked as he looked at Jamal, who still held the memory of the baby in his arms. The boy met his gaze shyly, nodding, unsure of how to respond, but his eyes told everything. He didn't need any reward. He just wanted to make sure the baby was okay. The millionaire reached forward, placing his hands on the boy's shoulders. "You are our guardian angel," Elizabeth added, her voice quivering with emotion. "Without you, we may never have found him. We are forever indebted to you." Jamal's family, who had been sitting nearby, exchanged glances with each other, all of them overwhelmed by the kind words from the Whitmores. The boy looked up at them with wide eyes, feeling a wave of emotion he wasn't sure how to handle. The million-dollar smile of Jonathan Whitmore, his face full of gratitude, made the boy feel like the most important person in the room. But he didn't know how to process the sudden shift from a child just trying to help to a hero with such significant attention. Jonathan continued, "We want to do something for you, something that expresses just how much we appreciate what you've done. You've given us back everything we thought we lost." Elizabeth smiled through her tears. She, too, was lost for words, but her gaze spoke volumes. She felt as though this boy had saved not just their son, but their family as a whole. They had been on the verge of losing everything, and this small act of kindness had changed their world. Jamal's parents were hesitant to say anything. They had never expected this kind of recognition for their son. In their eyes, he was simply a child who had done the right thing. But as they exchanged glances, they knew this moment was bigger than anything they could have imagined. Jonathan cleared his throat, still struggling to find the words. "Please, bring your family to our estate tomorrow," he said, his voice steady but emotional. "I want to personally thank you for what you've done. You've given us back our son, and I can never repay that. But I can offer something that may help you and your family." Jamal, still sitting quietly beside his parents, looked up at Jonathan, unsure of what to say. His young mind struggled to grasp the gravity of the situation. Just a few days ago, he was playing in a quiet part of the town, never expecting that his actions would lead to such a dramatic turn of events. Now, he was standing at the center of a miracle that had saved a family from the darkest days of their lives. The next day, Jamal and his parents arrived at the Whitmore estate, a sprawling mansion surrounded by acres of land. The contrast between their modest home and the luxury of the estate was stark, and the boy couldn't help but feel a little out of place. His parents, however, felt an overwhelming mix of emotions: gratitude, awe, and an undercurrent of disbelief. They never expected their son's small act of kindness to lead to something so extraordinary. The Whitmores greeted them warmly, ushering them into a beautiful, well-decorated living room. The family sat together, and Jonathan wasted no time in expressing his gratitude again. "I want you to understand that what your son did has changed our lives. He not only brought our baby back, but restored a sense of hope in our hearts," Jonathan began, his voice steady, though still laced with emotion. "This house, this life, it's all possible because of him, and we want to give him a future that reflects his incredible act of kindness." Jamal's parents exchanged a glance, hesitant, yet overwhelmed by the magnitude of what Jonathan was about to offer. Jonathan gestured toward the fireplace, where a large contract was laid out on the table. "As a gesture of our gratitude, I've decided to transfer ownership of a significant portion of my estate to your son," he said, his voice resolute. "This land, this home, it will be his. He deserves a place where he can grow, learn, and thrive." Jamal's eyes widened in disbelief. You want to give me this?" he asked, his voice trembling with uncertainty. Jonathan smiled warmly. "Yes, and it's not just the property. I've set up a trust fund for you, a fund to ensure your education, your future, whatever you want to do in life. You'll have the resources to make it happen. It's the least we can do for the boy who saved our son." Jamal's parents, though speechless, were deeply moved. His mother placed her hand on his shoulder, her eyes filled with tears. "This is too much," she whispered, her voice quivering. Jamal, still uncertain, turned to his parents. "But I didn't do it for any of this," he said quietly. "I just wanted to help." Jonathan leaned in, his tone earnest. "And that's why we want to give this to you. You acted without expecting anything in return, but we want you to know that your actions don't go unnoticed. This is our way of honoring your kindness." The boy's father, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. "It's a lot for us to take in, but I think you should accept this, son. It's not just a gift. It's a way for the Whitmores to thank you properly." Jamal's eyes looked down at the contract, his small hands clutching his lap nervously. He had never imagined his life could change so drastically in such a short amount of time. But as he looked up at Jonathan, who smiled warmly at him, the boy felt a small wave of reassurance. "You've given us more than we could ever repay," Jonathan continued, "but I hope that this can give you the life you deserve. We'll always be here for you." Jamal nodded slowly, finally understanding the depth of Jonathan's generosity. "Thank you," he said, his voice soft but filled with gratitude. "I'll do my best to make you proud." The atmosphere in the room lightened as the Whitmores shared smiles and words of encouragement. Jamal's parents felt a deep sense of relief and pride as they saw their son beginning to embrace the incredible opportunity before him. This was a turning point, a life-changing moment that would not only affect their future, but also the future of the boy, who had shown the world that true kindness can change lives in the most unexpected ways. As the family spent the day at the Whitmore estate, Jamal felt the weight of the responsibility settling on his young shoulders. But for now, he was content. His actions had been simple, but their ripple effect was profound, and no matter what the future held, he knew he had made a lasting impact on a family that would forever be grateful. The boy's actions spread like wildfire across social media, capturing the attention of people far beyond his local community. News outlets picked up the story, highlighting his bravery and compassion in the face of such an incredible circumstance. Headlines across the country screamed, "Boy thought to be lost," "Saves millionaire's son," and praised his ability to remain calm and selfless in the face of a potentially life-threatening situation. People from all walks of life, from politicians to celebrities, took to their platforms to share the story. Social media flooded with messages of support for Jamal, with hashtags like #HeroBoy and #SavedByKindness trending worldwide. Parents, teachers, and community leaders highlighted him as a role model, urging young children to emulate his courage and sense of responsibility. In a world often filled with negativity, Jamal's act of kindness was a refreshing reminder that there is still goodness in the world. His story ignited conversations about the importance of helping others, especially in moments of crisis. People praised his bravery, calling him a living example of how one small act could ripple out and change everything. But the attention didn't stop there. As the story continued to capture hearts and minds, Jamal's life also began to change in ways he could never have imagined. His newfound status as a hero brought with it a platform, an opportunity to make an even bigger difference in the world. Media outlets invited him for interviews, where he spoke humbly about his actions, stressing that he simply did what anyone else should have done. Despite the overwhelming praise, Jamal remained grounded, always attributing his actions to his strong moral compass and the lessons his parents had taught him. The Whitmore family, equally moved by the overwhelming response, continued to stay closely involved with Jamal and his family. What began as a gesture of gratitude blossomed into a lasting, meaningful relationship. The two families visited each other regularly, exchanging stories, celebrating holidays together, and supporting one another in times of need. The baby, who had grown into a healthy young child, was told stories of the boy who had saved his life. As he grew older, he learned more about the bravery and heroism of Jamal, who had been there for him during one of the most critical moments of his life. He came to think of him as a part of his family, a bond that extended beyond blood. The connection between the families became a beautiful testament to the power of kindness and unity, and it stood as a reminder to everyone that sometimes the most unlikely heroes come from the most humble places. As Jamal's story continued to be shared and celebrated, his legacy as a hero began to live on, serving as an example of selflessness, courage, and the profound impact of doing the right thing when it matters the most. Jamal's life, once simple and filled with the innocent joys of childhood, was forever changed by one small yet significant act of bravery. In a world where fear often overshadows hope, his courage served as a beacon of light that illuminated the path to something greater. His decision to help the baby that day not only saved a life, but sparked a series of events that would alter the course of many lives, both his own and those around him. As time passed, Jamal grew more accustomed to the newfound attention, but he never let it change him. His humility and selflessness remained at the heart of everything he did. He continued to play, learn, and grow, but now with the understanding that his actions had a greater impact than he could have ever imagined. His simple, kind heart had set off a ripple effect that reached far beyond what anyone could have expected. The Whitmore family, forever indebted to Jamal, continued to nurture their relationship with him, ensuring that he was given every opportunity to succeed. Their bond with his family was built on gratitude, love, and mutual respect, and it grew stronger over the years. Jamal's story became a source of inspiration for many, reminding people of the power of kindness and the ability each of us has to change the world for the better, no matter our age or circumstances. The community surrounding them began to change as well. People saw the value in helping others and began to step up in their own lives, offering support and assistance where they could. The millionaire, deeply moved by Jamal's actions, worked tirelessly to give back to the community, ensuring that no one else had to face hardship alone. In the years that followed, Jamal became a symbol of hope and resilience. His legacy inspired countless others to act with compassion and courage, and his story was told to generations to come as a reminder that even the smallest acts of kindness can have monumental consequences. The world around him became a little kinder, a little more generous, and a little more loving because of one boy's selfless decision. What began with a shopkeeper's fleeting thought that he was just a lost kid ended with a gift that made headlines and a legacy that transformed lives. Jamal, a 6-year-old boy who stumbled upon a crying baby, didn't just save a life. He reunited a family and sparked a movement of kindness that echoed across the globe. The next day, when Jonathan Whitmore handed him the keys to a new future, with a portion of his estate and a trust fund, the world took notice. Headlines blazed with the story of the boy whose heart was bigger than his circumstances, and his act of courage became a call to action for us all. Jamal's story proves that heroism knows no age, and a single act of compassion can change the world forever.